In this lecture, we're going to take a look at arrays in ES6, because a lot of things were added to arrays. We now have a lot of new methods and also a new kind of loop. So let's dive right into this lecture. And we're actually going to use all of these colored boxes now here in this lecture. So let's start by selecting them. And we're going to save it in a constant. And of course we use document.querySelector all. Let's first take a look now at the HTML. And we see that all of them have this box class name here, right? So let's use that one to select them. So box. Now we already know that this querySelectorAll method does not return an array with these elements, but instead it returns a node list. You remember that one, right? So what we have to do is to transform it into an array. And what we always did in this course was using this weird trick where we called the slide method on the array prototype and setting the this variable to the boxes in this case, right? So in ES5, this is how we would do it. So boxes array and 5 for ES5, we would say array.prototype and then use the slice method and then call it with boxes. So you remember this part, right? And so now we have an array, and now we can use all of the array methods. So let's say we wanted to change all of these boxes here to blue. Okay, so like this blue color here. So we can now use the for each method. So boxes array 5 dot for each and our callback function. And here I'm going to write it the ES5 way. So the current element, and I want to change the style, the background color, to this blue color, which is called Dodger blue. So this is a CSS color name. Okay, and that's it actually. So let's test this out. And nothing changed. And yeah, it's because I misspelled here this word. So it's called Dodger blue, okay? So just like this. And yeah, so now they're all blue. But we had to use this hack here, right? And so there's actually a better way now in ES6. So let's get rid of this code and write it in ES6. So boxes array 6, and now we have a new method which is called from. So all we have to do is say array.from and then boxes. And what this is going to do is to simply transform this node list here that we have in boxes to an array. And it's as simple as that. And so now we can say boxes array 6 for each. And now I'm going to use the arrow function. Okay, so I want the current element and I want to change its style. To Dodger blue. And I hope it's correct this time. And yeah, it works. And since this is actually so short and simple, we can even take this from here and do it like this. And so we went from all of this code here to doing the same thing in just one line of code. So this new from method here makes our code a bit shorter and it also looks better. Alright, so let's now talk about loops. So usually when we want to loop over an array, we use the for each or the map method. And they usually work just fine, right? Now, the problem with them is that we actually cannot break from them. And we can also not use the continue statement. So if we want to use the break or the continue statements in a loop, we cannot use for each. And we can also not use map. And so we would use a simple for loop in ES5, which forces us to write a lot of code just for a very simple loop. So suppose that we wanted to change the text here in the boxes, okay? Because now this box is no longer green and this is no longer orange. So let's say that we want to change the text from this box and from this box. So if we're in a loop, we can simply say that here in the second box, we want the loop to continue and not to do anything. So let's start by writing that the ES5 way. So as I was saying, we use a simple for loop here. So you already know how this works, right? Boxes array 5, and it's not active because I commented out this code here, right? Okay. Dot length and I++. So this is nothing new at all for you. And now all we have to do is to say that if it's this second box here, then we want to continue the loop. So let's check it out. And the class name of this one here is box blue. So we cannot simply say just blue, but instead we have to say that the class name is box blue. So let me show you how we can do that. So we say that if the boxes array at the current position, so position I, the class name, and I'm not sure if we already used that in the course, but I think we didn't. So this is a great time to learn this new property. So with class name here, we can retrieve the name of the class, of course, and then perform this kind of check that we have here. So in this case, to see if this element has the box blue class on it. And if it does, then we want to continue. Okay, and I'm sure that you remember the continue and break keywords right from the beginning of the course. So what the continue will do is to simply skip this iteration of the loop and go right to the next one. And the break keyword will break this loop, and then we don't continue to the next iteration. So if we would use break here, then we simply would break the loop and it would stop here and not continue. Okay, but in the other cases, we simply want to change the text. So boxes array 5, and of course we need to select the current box, and then text content, and let's say I change to blue, which wouldn't make much sense on the second one because it is already blue. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so I changed to blue, nothing changed here, and I changed to blue. Let me just show you what happens with the break. Okay, and so in this case, only the first one would change, and then as soon as we hit the second element, it would break from the loop and not continue. Okay. Now, I really don't like to use the for loop like this. We have to write all of this code here, which always seems a bit repetitive, and then to select each element, we always have to write it out like this. And so in ES6, we now have a new loop. And this new loop combines the easy to use for each with the for loop. And this new loop is called the for of. So instead of for, it's called for of. So let's take out this code and write it the ES6 way. And here is how the for of loop works. So for, and then in here we can create a new variable, a constant for example, and then such as we do in the for each method, we can define our current element. And we can call this whatever we want. We can say current or element or whatever we want. And we say that this is an element of the boxes array 6. And that's it. So this is a simple loop where we can define the current element rather than having to do all of this weird code here. So again, this combines the very easy to use for each or map method with the for loop. So and then in here we can also use the continue or the break statement, which we cannot in map or for each. So let's do the same thing that we did before. So if boxes array, and actually we want 6. Let me see if it's active here. Oh, it's actually not, because I deleted that variable. So let me just add it back here, okay? So boxes are 6. Alright, just because we need this variable here later on. So dot class name equals box blue. Then we want to continue. Okay, and now let's just copy this part here so we don't have to write it all over again. But here it's now the simpler cur. Or it could be even simpler like C or whatever we want. Now this here is actually not correct, because what we want is the class name of the current element, right? Not of the entire boxes array. So this was a mistake. So let's now check it out. And yep, it worked just like before. This one changed and this one changed. The one in the middle just stays the same. So we went from this a bit more confusing and bigger code to this one here. And in here, we can actually do a little bit better, because now we have these new string methods. And so what we can do here is to use the includes method. So I hope you remember that one from one of the previous lectures. So includes, and we can now say blue. And remember that this one is gonna return a true if the class name contains the name blue. And so this way, we don't have to write here the entire class name, because we're just interested in the blue part. So this makes it even a bit better and more readable. And so you also just saw a good application of this new includes method. And of course, it still works. So this was of course a very simple example, but it's really important to show you that sometimes we might need the break or continue statements in a loop. And in this case, the new for off loop here comes in very handy. Alright, and just to finish, there are also two new and very useful array methods that allow us to find elements in an array. So up until this point, we only had the index of method, right? But now there are a couple of new ones, and I'm going to show you two of them, which are the best ones in my opinion. So suppose that we have a group of children and we know that only one of them is of full age. So let's now find out who and how old that person is. So again, we start with ES5. And let's say the ages of these children were 12, 17, 8, 21, 14, and 11. That's not quite 11. Okay. So the ES5 way, we would first have to create a Boolean array to determine whether each element of the array is younger or older than 18. And we could then use the index of to determine the element that we want. So let's use the map method to create an array with true or false values like this. So full age, which I'm going to abbreviate as full, and then ages.map. Okay, and I want the current, of course. And all we need to do here is to return if the current element is older or equal to 18 years. Okay, let's just check this. So false, 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 true, and false, false. So only this one is true. But now we have to find out the position of this element here in the array. And in order to do that, we use the index of method. Index of, and we want the one that is true, right? And in order to see this, let's use console.log again. And here we go. So it's element number 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. And if we want to now see how old the person is, we need to retrieve that exact element from the array. So ages, and then to retrieve, and now we need to again calculate the position of that element that's true. And so the person is, that's right, 21 years old. So that's a lot of work just for this very simple task, right? And so in ES5, once again, our life is made easier with a couple of new methods. And these new methods are the find index and the find methods. So in ES6, let's now start by using the find index method. And this method, we can pass a callback function into it, and it's then going to return us the index of the array where the callback function returns true. So it's just like this. So ages.find the index. And then this works a bit like the map or the for each methods. So we have a callback function that has access to the current element, to the current index, and the entire array. And so I can write cur, then my arrow function, and then what I want is the same expression that we had before, which is when the current is greater or equal to 18 years old. So what this does is to basically return the index for the element in which this expression here, so this callback function, returns the value true. And that's as simple as it. So let's actually console.log this result to see if it's the same as here. And yes, it is. So it's number 3. And if we actually want to retrieve the element and not just the index, then we could do something very similar. Instead of having to write it like this way here, so the array and then retrieve the value, no, we have a simple method that does all of that automatically. So ages, find, and then this part here is of course the same. So if you don't want to know the index, we actually don't even have to calculate it. So we could just use this one if all we are interested in is to find the value that is greater than 18. And that value is 21, of course. So a lot of new and very useful stuff about arrays. These are great additions to the new standard of JavaScript, so to ES6. All right, so see you in the next video.